Hello, collective listeners. On today's episode, we have Corey Bell. Corey is an assistant strength and conditioning coach with Charlotte 49ers football. Corey and I were connected through Patrick Brooks, who was a guest on here a little bit while back. Patrick was an intern for me, and prior to stopping with me, he actually stopped with Corey at Charlotte. So it was great to speak with Corey and kind of hear about his process. Former collegiate football player, now transitioning into being a football strength and conditioning coach. And he talks about the differences in coaches he's worked with along the way and how that much has helped him during his career. So I hope you all enjoy, and thank you for listening. What's going on, collective listeners? On today's episode, we have Corey Bell. Corey Bell is the football performance assistant coach at Charlotte University. Corey, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, Coach, I appreciate you. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, absolutely. We got introduced. Listeners will probably remember a couple episodes back was Patrick Brooks was on, and then Patrick was actually the first person to work for you. Came to you first, and then came to me afterwards. So you did a great job developing Pat. Probably one of the best interns I've ever had. I mean, so he was fantastic. So I got to say thank you before we even start.
Man, yeah, that's awesome. He was probably to this day the standard as far as interns. We compare him to him, so that's awesome that you guys got to able to help him get to his next spot.
He crushed it. And everybody around here, especially on the women's side, is always asking, like, man, can we get Pat back? Like, how do we get Pat back and all this? I'm like, we need a little bit of money now. He's earned his opportunity to
Yeah,
make money. He's not working for free anymore.
yeah,
So,
that's always the goal. That's always the goal, man.
absolutely. Well, let's just get it started, man. Can you kind of just give us a brief background, your history through athletics, strength and conditioning, and then what's led you to your current position?
Yeah, just brief background. Grew up in a football family. Right, I got introduced to the game by my dad. He played in NFL back in I think starting in 1994, and he finished off around 2001 for the Steelers for 6 years, Bengals for two. So football's always been it's been part of my life. So then I played it myself growing up, and I ended up going to North Carolina, playing ball there, and there is where I really fell in love with the weight room and training and all that. So we had my first 4 seasons. I had a strength coach by Lou Hernandez, and while he was there, man, just from a maturity standpoint, I saw how much the weight room and strength can help you on the field. So I started to love it there. And then what really finished it off for me, really though, was I had my coach my senior year by the name of Brian Hess. He was coming from Army, and now he's still at Carolina to this day. And Coach Hess really made me fall in love with it, with just how I thought at the age of I think 22. I kind of thought I hit my peak, and he showed me it's just even another level to tap into from strength, mobility, speed. Just he puts it all together. He runs a really great program. So he made me really fall in love with it even more, which led me on to possibly pursuing it as a profession. So after that, during the COVID times, I was in grad school over at Elon University. Now over there is Nick DeMarco, and so actually spending time with him made me realize I actually want to be a strength coach. At that time, I still didn't know, but being around him, I realized I wanted to be a strength coach. Figured out I asked them what's the next thing I needed to do. Do I need to go on LinkedIn or Indeed or something? I didn't know, and so he told me to follow this little account on Instagram or Twitter, Strength Coach Network or something
Yep,
like that.
Strength Coach Job Network. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. And so I think around the time that I checked it out, like when I just checked it out, it was late February, and Georgia needed interns, LSU needed interns. All these schools were posting it, so I was just sending my resume, emailing 8 or 9 schools. Majority of them hit me back because the sell was I used to play. I'm a former player, so they hit me back. But LSU was the first school to contact me back when Coach Moffitt was there. So Coach, I think it's Coach Riedel, Jacob Riedel. He called me, asked me could I come down. I told him, yeah, I'll be there. And so I finished out my semester of grad school till May. This is 2021, and headed down to LSU. And so I got to see Coach Moffitt for about 2-3 months that summer, and I had plans on maybe staying there for the season. But what ended up happening was Chris Laskowski, he came by and visited Baton Rouge. I'm a Charlotte guy. I'm from Charlotte. So we connected. And then before I knew it, I was down in Charlotte late 2021, and I've been here ever since.
I mean, that's quite the track record of the strength coaches that you've been working with. I mean, I think everybody
Yeah.
can recognize those names. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially with Elon, I mean, that was kind of the first for me, I think, of a coach who posted things in a different type of way.
Mhm.
I came up in the strength. I mean, I'm taking my starting strength certification test this summer. So all powerlifting type stuff. And those guys are strong too, but in a different way from a standpoint of more speed training, understanding the different aspects of the game, not necessarily just strength based. And then to go to somebody like Tommy Moffitt, who's an absolute legend in the field, everybody knows
Mhm.
that name. um, how do you feel like those kind of differing philosophies and then also
Yeah.
working for these bigger names has influenced you to this point?
Yeah, man. I tell you, I before I even got into this, it wasn't like I crafted this. You know what I mean? Like it's just been a blessing. Like I haven't
Mm,
meant to fall into these positions, but that's how it's worked out for me. So thank God for it. But playing, I can tell you every coach I've been under, I got something from Lou Hernandez, real old school. We're gonna lift the house. We're gonna push wooden sleds. It's one of those. It's remember the Titans. So we're gonna do that. And so with him, he kind of got me to that point where it's just a mentality. And so I learned that from him. Then Coach Hess, he just brought such a holistic program. Like there was no stone unturned with him. Like from prehab, just everything. It's amazing. So I got to see his side of it. Right, we were power cleaning still when I was there with him. Then I get to Demarco, and he's kind of the first person I see that's just totally different. You're not bilateral squatting. We're all going to do single leg. You're not. He doesn't believe in power cleaning, and just different things that goes against the grain. But what I saw with him is that it still works. So he kind of opened my mind a little bit. I had the things that I liked. Like I like my guys to power clean, but I understood that there's a million ways to skin a cat, right? So going from Coach DeMarco to Coach Moffitt, you kind of go back to the foundation of stuff because I mean he's won 3 national titles in almost 3 different decades, right? He had one with Saban in the early 2000s. You had the one in I guess it was '07 with Les Miles, and then he had the 2019 that famous year with Coach O. So 3 different coaches, I'd say. And in his program, you saw we used perch, but we still was snatching, and we were doing sumo deadlift, different things. So it was old school, but he kind of blended it really well. And then now I get to Charlotte with Coach Chris Laskowski, learn some different things from him, and then on top of that, I get Lou Carella coming in here, and he's someone that his programming is different than all of them. All those coaches I've been around, Coach Hernandez, Coach Hess, DeMarco, Moffitt, and then you got Laskowski to Lou Carella. Lou's different than anybody I've ever been around. And so I really feel like I've touched every single perspective you could possibly touch, every extreme from different people. So it just helped me open my mind, and just be able to adapt and understand that all these guys have a different way to to try to get a plan going for guys, and no one's wrong. Everybody's right. It's just they all got their different ways of going about it. So that's it's been interesting, man. Always being around different people who are very different. They don't come from the same coaching trees. All of them are their own person. So long story short, that's how I'd probably put it, man. It's amazing. I'm always learning.
That's why I advocate so strongly, especially for younger coaches, to go to different programs and to
Mhm.
reach out to people exactly like you said who are not within the same tree. Too, it's really easy to kind of go through a process where, like with Pat, right? I might send him to somebody, hey, I know this guy over at, Real Salt Lake, and he's a soccer guy, but I like his philosophy, I like what he does. So you go over there, and he's learning kind of the same thing. Maybe a few
Yeah.
tweaks, but it's essentially the same concept. I love it, which exactly what you're saying is going to a different coach, but also a completely different philosophy as well. And then it all culminates into exactly what you mentioned earlier. Nick DeMarco doesn't like power cleans, right? But you do, so you're going to keep him in there. But you have learned different things from his program that you want to incorporate in your own as well. So when it comes time for you to be your head strength coach, you draw from this pool of experience, you see how different things are done, and then you accomplish exactly what you're looking for through your process because it's been
Mhm.
an amalgamation of sorts of every single other coach that you've worked for. That's why I push for it so hard because I feel like a lot of coaches it's easy and like no knock on people because I've spoken with people, great coaches who have been a intern, GA, assistant, then head, all at the exact same spot, right? You still learn
Mm.
from other coaches there, but I feel like it's almost like a crash course, and it's so cool because I remember going from different philosophies, and it breaks you down each time. You're like, man, I don't
Yep.
know anything, like, and you have
Yep.
to kind of build yourself back up
Yep.
and relearn it. But then once you do, you're stronger for it on the other side.
Yep, and that's that's exactly how it goes, man. That's exactly how it goes. If I would have, playing at Carolina, then go coach at Carolina like fresh out, all I would have known is Coach Hess and how he does things. And it would have maybe put me in a place where I only thought he could be right, no one else. You know what I mean? Now to this day, he's the reason I'm in this profession. And if I had to side with how I do stuff, if I program, it may look like his a little bit, right? But I grew once I got to go see Coach DeMarco. I grew even more once I got to see Coach Moffitt. Then I come to Charlotte and I've had two string coaches, right, with Coach Laskowski. And then when Coach Corella came in, he showed me even more stuff. So it's humbling, but it makes you appreciate everybody because I've been around all these guys and I'm like, they're all like all of them are right. Because at the end of the day, it's all about results. So however you want to get there is how you get there. And so that's where it showed me like, man, there's a million ways to do this thing. Nobody's wrong. As long as guys aren't getting hurt, right? As long as guys are getting bigger, stronger, faster, everybody's right. So it helped me not be in a box. And all these guys that I got to work for, I want to say none of them really come from the same tree. So when you see me program, which I program most of the time, I'll do it on myself. When I program, you can look at certain blocks and I can say that's Coach S and that's
Mm,
Coach Moffitt. Yeah, there's Coach Corella right there. There's Coach L. There's DeMarco. So I love it, man. I love the strength and conditioning community. And like you just said, man, I think it's some merit to getting outside of one tree and seeing some other perspectives. And there's going to be some things that you don't agree with, but there are even in I think truly in just about every strength coach, you could look at a coach that you disagree almost with everything on, you can pull something from them, that you would use.
absolutely.
And so just being able to take the things that you like from each of them. And then if I got 20% of each of them, now I got my own type of program. And then I guess you would say my name's under it, but we're all just taking each other's stuff really at the end of the day.
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, I'll tell you this much: like, if you looked at my program, you would basically say Bill Starr might have wrote it. Because that was
Mm,
the first book they made me read at Tennessee was "The Strongest Shall Survive," and so
mm.
it's 100% correct. We all pull from each other. It's a different process, but at the end of the day, it's all about the results that you get. Now, one thing I bet has gotten better for you though is going to be your motivational speeches. Am I
Oh
correct?
my gosh. Oh my gosh. I tell you, that's so funny. I'll tell you, man, like it's funny with Coach Lou because I think people see the Instagram and the Twitter and the speaking engagements. Understand he had been coaching for years before he kind of blew up with that stuff. Like he's not actually a guy who looks for the notoriety, wants the big spotlight. That's not him. He's been doing the speeches way before this. That book he just dropped, Firelighters 365, man, he's been working on that thing for years, like I think since 2014. He just types out his thoughts and then he ended up turning it into a book, you know? So he's a real genuine guy. And so he has a speech every time, every single lift we had last year, every single run, I want to say, he had a speech at the end, every single one. And they don't overlap and they don't sound the same. So you got to think how much you really like grow to have an appreciation for it because for someone to give a speech every single day or really a message, and guys gravitate toward it, they grab it. It can't be manufactured because otherwise he'd start to say the same things, but he never did.
Mm.
Every day it was something new pertaining to what the team needed at that time. And for me, it's like, you can go on social media and look at them and you could have your opinions on them. But at the end of the day, you just got to look at how the players feel about him. And I haven't really met any players who don't like him. As a matter of fact, the guys love him, right? Every time I bring his name up, if I run into some Georgia Tech kids, they love him. So it's one of those deals where the track record, you got to be inside to really see him and just see how humble he is and how good of a guy he is. And he fights for the kids, he fights for the people that work for him. And I have a bit of the speeches that he gives. It's definitely I took from it. I definitely took it from it. And so he showed me it's bigger than just the program, and it's really trying to get guys to buy in. Strength and conditioning. We talk about culture. It's it's a cliche, but he really lives it. Like it's so real. So it's awesome to be around him. I've definitely learned a lot from all his messages.
I mean, it's so interesting to me from a football perspective because in basketball, it's a lot of more one-on-one conversations, right? Because
Mhm.
it's 15 guys, you know what's going to get to each person. And then on the football side is 120 guys that you're trying to get through to. And so, I mean, at that point, it seems like almost a speech would have to be done every day because it's not going to resonate with some of those guys. But then maybe a different speech on a completely different topic resonates with a different group. So then you develop buy-in as a whole from the group. And you're not going to say, on a daily basis check in individually with 120 guys. It's just not possible to do it and do your job. So I agree. I think the social media aspect. I think the haters of strength and conditioning like to pick out things that they kind of see as like corny. But to me, I think it's a way that's been really effective at engaging with your team. And then Pat came back over the summer. He spent a couple days with y'all, came back, and he was like, "No, man, that really gets you motivated. Like, it's
Yeah.
not like just some like fluff stuff. Like, he's like, I left there ready to like go power clean 315. We both know Pat could probably do
Yep.
about 135. So,
Man, I tell you, and it's amazing, man, because it's not. I want to say I don't even know how it started. Someone was recording him giving the speech, but he had been doing that for so many years past, so it was never to be seen. But I mean, shoot, if people are listening and they want to watch, then let them record. They want to buy a
absolutely,
book, let them buy a book. Why not?
it's a
Why
free
not?
country.
Yeah, you've been doing it for years. You might as well just put it out there. So, yeah, man, I think if people got to know him and just been around him and see it's not a facade, he's not faking. Like this thing is real. He's a real dude. So I got love for him. I'm learning something every single day.
And that's exactly where you want to be. I mean,
Yep.
100%. That's exactly where you want to be.
Yep.
Well, about your journey, you discussed the relationships with your coaches is what kind of helped you become a strength coach.
Yep.
And I think it's so interesting because a lot of players, kind of go through that process. I've seen where they kind of decide between if they want to be a coach. It's really kind of that division where it's, do I want to be more on the sports side? Do I want to be more admin? Do I want to get involved? Like we have a former wrestlers, our director of giving here. It's a different branch that you can go within athletics. Do you feel like your relationship with those coaches is what influenced you towards strength and conditioning, or were there more factors that kind of piled into it?
Yeah, it was definitely relationships. Like I mean, you can look back at the power cleans and the squats and all that other stuff, but that's not necessarily the stuff you remember. I don't remember certain programming that Coach Hess did, but I remember how much respect I have for him and how he helped me just get to another level of confidence. Same thing with Coach Hernandez and so on and so forth. So you may not remember every single day and every single thing that you did, but you remember the respect and how those people made you feel, right? And so my relationship with my coaches from a football side, I know a good bit as far as playing DB, also playing receiver, things as that. My dad played DB in the league, so even last year I helped out with our corners, right? So I know football, and I say that modestly, but I didn't want to jump into football because I see the turnover. While I was in college, I probably had four position coaches, maybe 5 years, 4 years. Um, and with coaches, man, they got to make depth charts. That's what I love about strength and conditioning. I don't have to make depth charts. Who wants to work is going to get the work. It doesn't matter to me, right? And then just you understand the nature of the game. For me in my career, as a freshman, you're getting recruited, and then you get there your freshman year. In my freshman year at Carolina, we went on an 11-game win streak. We're senior heavy. Freshmen weren't playing, and I get it, you know, but you're not a priority in the beginning, that's just how the game rolls. Now my sophomore year comes around, I'm starting, I'm playing, and I see how different coaches are treating me because they need me to play. Obviously, that's just what it is. It's they got to give you more time. They got to spend more time with you to get you ready to play. Then I've also had a season-ending injury where, all right, well, you can't help me right now, so I got to spend more time with this guy. So I say that because I've been through every phase from not playing to being hurt to coming back, all that stuff. And one thing you see on the sports side is they have to give their attention to the depth chart, whoever's starting, right? Because that's you're the only one who can help me right now. I get it. Now I say that because with the strength coaches, never changed. If you're a youngin and who's not playing, they're trying to get you ready to play. If you're the guy who's playing now, they're still trying to help you get stronger and faster. They're keeping you motivated. If you get hurt, all right, well now it's the comeback season. We're going to help you get back in rehab. They're always there for the work. It never changed. And so the weight room in a lot of places is the only place of stability. No matter if you're doing great or you're not doing good or you're just down in the dumps, they're always there for you. They're always helping you. And that's something I just always respected. That, like, strength coaches, they don't really respect the depth chart. They just want to get the work, whoever wants to work. So when I seen that, I said, and then honestly, football coaches, they got to recruit. They got to leave a lot. You really, once you get to college, you spend your time with the strength staff all year. And so just seeing all that, I was like, if I ever got into coaching, I'd be a strength coach because you spend the most time with the guys, and no matter what happens to the guys as far as depth chart, how the season's going, or if they're just straight up hurt, you're always there. And I wanted to be that. So shout out to my coaches when I was playing, man. Coach Hess, Dean, Blue, Simon. I could shout all those guys out. Mo over there in Colorado. They just set such a good example. Even Coach Zach too, that made me be like, that's what I want to be. So that's what I would say. That just those relationships I had with them, I said that's it. That's what I want to do.
That's such an interesting point that people never really bring up about the strength and conditioning side is the fact that you don't have to make those ultimately very hard decisions at the end of the day, right? Like you don't have to build that depth chart. I think it's easy for coaches too to kind of turn to the assistant and say, like, man, I wish we would just cut this guy. Like, I don't want to deal with him anymore, right? And then it's easy for you to just say that, and then imagine being in the head coach's spot where you actually have to have that conversation.
Yep.
And it's very similar to all the Saban stuff that's been popping up recently, where he talks about why he doesn't cut people and why he keeps them there and the success they've seen with them in the long run. Like, I think our position can be tough because a lot of times it's more of the accountability side, but at the same
Mhm.
time, like, you still get to be the guy who builds people up. You still
Yeah.
get to be the guy who is always there for them. Like you said, the playing time doesn't matter. It's actually better if you played less because that means you get to spend more time in the weight room and you
Mhm.
get to spend more time developing and things like that. Do you seek those guys out, the guys who maybe aren't getting the attention from the position coaches because you've been in their shoes before?
Yeah, it's tough. It depends on the time of the year. Because one thing, I being on that coaching side, I definitely understand both sides of it. You know what I mean? So for me, I've probably spent time. I spend time with the guys who play a lot, obviously, because I'm helping them, especially the corners. But I usually try to spend some time with the young guys and talk with them. Like, it's funny enough, I had a freshman last year who's a kid's a barber. Start to let him cut my hair, right? And so hanging around him and the other freshman while he's giving me a cut, that's when I'd spend my time with them. Those younger guys, they're just it's like drinking water through a fire hose. They're trying to get used to being on their own, going to class, being on time, practice, and going to practice every day. And this is probably the first time in their life where they're not playing. So it's different. You got to be kind of all things to all people. And sometimes with so many guys on the team, you get caught up in the rat race and you're focusing on this kid, but this kid has something going on, or this kid, and then the other kid who you didn't even think about, he has something going on. So I would say I don't overcompensate by trying to spend a lot of time with the kids who don't play. I try to space it out and just see where I just go where I see fit. It's typically random, but it always works itself out, and that's why it's important, man. With your strength staff, Lou can't talk to everybody, and I can't either. So you just naturally gravitate towards certain guys, and really certain guys kind of gravitate towards you. When we get to pregame or practice, certain guys want to do a stretch routine. They'll just naturally go to a certain coach, right? Some guys develop certain routines in the weight room. They naturally go to a certain coach, and before you know it, you've got your crew of 30 guys. So it's amazing how they just naturally happens as far as who you spend your time with and who needs that attention from you. So that's kind of how the situation goes here.
It's funny you bring up that natural gravitation because it immediately brings me back to the specialists when I was at Tennessee, right? I mean, those guys like
Yeah,
immediately gravitated towards me because they all liked lifting and we were the same age and, like all idiots. Like, it's almost the same on every football team. The specialists are weird dudes who are the
man.
funniest dudes of all time, though. I mean, they always crack me up. And so it just brought me back to that moment just thinking about it.
It's funny you say that, dog. Like, I don't think I've ever been to a team where the specialists weren't just different. Like, man, you see the specialists on TV and you would think like they're the quiet guys. No, they're like the loudest guys, wackiest guys you'll ever meet. I mean, from Carolina to dang LSU to Charlotte, like every specialist, you've never met one that you'll meet again. Like they're different people, but they're hard workers. Usually get one side of it. Either they're kind of like I'm not with it, or they're the hardest workers. So yeah, man, it's amazing. You talking about that just made me think of so many different people.
Oh, it just brings me back because exactly like you said, they're either the hardest workers or they're not about it. Like our punter wasn't about it whatsoever, so he would just like hang by the rack and be like, "Yeah, I think my back hurts a little bit today," and I'm like, "No, it doesn't, bro. Like I know it doesn't because it's a different pain every single day you come in here." And then we had the long snapper, who is hitting me up like, "Hey, let's go to hot yoga this weekend," and doing all these extra things. Like it's such a mix, but I love working with that group. It was
Oh my
fantastic.
goodness. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, man, that's how it's been here. This is probably the hardest group of workers we've had as specialists. I mean, kicker, punter, long snapper, especially our punter and long snapper last year, insane. Like hardest workers pound for pound on the team. So yeah, I definitely got an appreciation for those guys. They put in that work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what was the transition like for you going from player to being a coach? Did you struggle with certain things, like maybe the accountability piece, right? Because as a teammate holding people accountable, it's a little bit different than a coach, right? Or were there anything that kind of surprised you about this transition that you made?
Yeah, man, it's funny. My first real deal, like I'm a coach now, was 2021 when I was at LSU with Moffitt. So, um, I mean, if you're gonna start being an intern, you're gonna start your coaching career. That's as big as it gets, right? With Coach Moffitt, who's seen it all, and then on top of that, this is 2021 LSU. So the juniors, seniors, and the fifth years, and I think even 6 years because that was COVID season. They were all part of that 2019 team, right? So we still had guys like Derek Stingley and a whole bunch of other crew guys. Even that kid now plays receiver. He's going to go first round. Neighbors, Malik Neighbors. He was a freshman that people didn't know back then when I was there. So it was interesting because most of those guys that I was coaching, some of them, I think a guy, maybe one guy on the team was older than me. A couple of them were the same age as me. And then the other ones, like y'all were young enough for me to play against you. So I knew I couldn't come down there trying to demand everything in the world, right? So something that someone had told me before was this is a saying, it's rules without relationship equals rebellion, right? So I knew I had to develop a relationship first, and they had to see that I know what I'm talking about. And then after that, you got them, right? So I didn't come down there as young as I was. I didn't try to come down there being too cool because you try to be too cool, it's going to be hard for you to try to tighten up later because they're not going to take you serious. But I just give some input where I see fit, get to know guys, where you're from. Oh, you're from here, man. I know this place. Just start talking about little things like that. And then also give some advice here about the training, and it helped them. Cues are a big thing, man, to help some kids understand. So over time, through my knowledge, that's what they came to respect. And then from there, age wasn't the issue. So that's typically how it's been going for me. And even here, when I came over here to Charlotte, I think I was 24 initially when I started out. So it's the same idea, try to build relationships, but don't get too close or too common, right? And then they'll see the knowledge on you, and then they don't even remember, he looks like me, or because a lot of guys they see the black coach on the white staff, they think that's their friend. You know what I mean? And I am, but at the same time, demand the same respect as a coach, right? Maybe 24, 25, but you need to respect me just like you respect the 45-year-old, right? So it's tricky. It's tricky. But typically, man, for me, as long as I don't come in here in the beginning trying to be everybody's best friend, understanding that we're at work, we're trying to get a job done, and then just have knowledge, know what you're talking about. And typically after that, everything's good. And then once we get that relationship, I know that they respect and know what I'm talking about, then we joke around and have fun. So that's kind of how things go for me. We haven't really had any issues. It's pretty awesome. But learning people and trying to get to know them and build a relationship, it's that in itself is a whole nother. You could write books on that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because every guy you meet you'll never meet the same person. So it's always tricky and interesting, but it's fun.
What would be some advice you would give to somebody who's struggling with that relationship building aspect?
Yeah, some people it's tough because for me I had it easier because everything that I say to my guys, I lived it. I did exactly what y'all did. So I just know, a lot of things you gain through experience. But Typically for guys, the best thing that some of my coaches have told me, even at LSU, is you have to be yourself. If you try to be somebody else, everybody sees through it. So first off, be yourself and just make it work. I tell young guys, typically the interns, I'm like, man, be yourself and get the job done first, right? And along the way, again, guys naturally gravitate towards you. If you give them some information that will help them, and they see it, oh, it's over. You got them. They'll ask you anything, and if whatever you say, they're gonna do it because they remember the first time you gave them advice, it worked. So one thing I've noticed with these guys is one thing to gain respect really fast. It ain't necessarily the yelling. It ain't necessarily cussing them out or anything like that. Is does he know what he's talking about? If you know what you're talking about and it works, you got him. And it can be the simplest thing about stretching. It could be anything. Just find something to give them that they never heard before or they never looked at it that way. And if it works, it's over. But if you're a guy who doesn't really know what you're talking about, and I'm not saying you got to be a rocket scientist, it's just basic stuff. But if you don't know what you're talking about or you try to put on a facade, like just act like somebody you're not, they see through it, and then now you kind of look more like a fool than you did before. So just being genuine, being who you are, and just putting all the things you learned to practice. You don't have to give them something crazy, but as long as you know what you're talking about, you're confident, and you just be yourself, everything sorts itself out. I don't care how old you are, how young you are, white, black, you played the game or you didn't. Some of the best coaches didn't even play the game. We know that. So at the end of the day, it's just about knowledge and being genuine, and everything sorts itself out.
I think three very important words that can help save a relationship too are I don't know.
Mhm.
Is exactly from that point that you're coming from. Like, if I'm trying to develop a relationship and somebody asks me a question about something and then I give them bad advice, they're never going to come
Oh
again.
my gosh.
Like they'll actively avoid you on that piece. And so I think it's so important to have that understanding too of like if somebody asks you something you don't know, it's okay to say I don't know because it's not going to ruin that relationship with that person. It may even help it grow a little bit more because they know that you're not getting somebody who's going to BS them and just give them something just to
Mhm.
give them something, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm glad you said that because I didn't think about that too as far as what I was saying. Because I'll tell you, when I was interning for Moffitt, it was like we're all speaking the same language. So if someone has a question for me, it's like, bro, go ask Moffitt, go ask Coach Moffitt, or go ask Coach Riedel. But that's probably now that you said that's probably another big thing too. If we're talking interns, like learn that coach's language, be an extension of him, and then you'll always be straight. But yeah, saying I don't know is better than saying obviously giving the wrong thing because it makes you look worse. So yeah, man, yeah, yeah. I'm glad you said that because if me saying that, somebody would have took it and ran. So all right, let me figure out a way to show them up, and that is not what I'm saying. So definitely, I don't know will save you. That humility will definitely save you.
Well, you mentioned it too, kind of being an extension of that staff, using the same language. Like I think each coach can be individual, but at the same time, they should all be on a unified front, especially on a larger
Mhm,
staff with a bunch of different guys. Because the last thing that you would want is a guy understanding, hey, I can get away with something with Coach so and so that I couldn't get away
mhm,
with Coach Bell. So
mhm,
I'm going to make sure somebody else is watching my weigh-ins today versus Coach Bell or something like that, and
mhm.
that kind of just creates it always I've seen it kind of ruin a staff dynamic a little bit if everybody's not on a unified front, but then putting their own kind of little personal twist on how they coach. With such a big staff, especially on the football side, how do
Yeah.
you kind of contribute and how do you make sure that you bring your own to that role while still being a part of that unified front?
Yeah, yeah. As far as yeah, with especially up here with the staff, I've had to change it a little bit because I was in a weird situation where the staff that I came to Charlotte with is not the staff I'm with now. So I was here with the original staff. They left, and then Coach Poggi came, brought Lou, and we have a totally new staff here. So the Coach Bell that you had in 2022 different than the one you had in 2023. Um, it's just different. You just got to see you get in where you fit in, and just like players, coaches is the same deal as far as the gravitational deal. So on every staff, it kind of seems like certain position coaches you just naturally click with. So for me, I was really close with our corners coach, Rod Ojon, because he was a GA at Carolina when I was there. So I was with the corners a lot. Coach Sanders, he was a GA at Carolina when I was in high school when they were recruiting me. So for me, the people I gravitate toward were the DBs and that staff. So helping them how I could, right, being an extension of them, helping them at practice. And now this year we have some new coaches, so it's going to change again. So every year it's a little different. It's every year it's a little different. But with a big staff, man, there's gonna be some people that you click with and they end up being friends and you just kind of help however you can and you kind of find your voice within all of it, right? So sometimes a lot of times you don't really have to try to write it out and figure out who you're gonna be. It just naturally happens and the role changes every year.
It's so interesting because I agree 100%. And even for me, working with men's and women's basketball, right? Like those teams
Mhm.
have different needs. So I coach them differently. And so
Yeah,
it's the exact same program. I really don't change up that much. I don't think there is any, from the programming standpoint. It's more of how I coach it and how we approach certain things. Like I know I can let the women's team a lot choose their weights more, right?
yeah,
Because they'll pick weights that are appropriate for where they're at. If I tell the men's team go choose their weights, they're going to be doing single arm high pulls with 20 pounds and trying to bench press 95 just to get in, get out for the day. So it really makes it a different transition for me, on a daily basis. But then I agree on a year basis too, with the more you learn or with how this last season ended up and how you want to transition into this next season. What are the key points that you want to see? You have to be able to modify how you coach and change those things up a little bit. Was that transition at all awkward for you? Did you have any hiccups on the road when it was kind of that transition from 2022 Bell to 2023?
man. Uh, I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say so. The biggest thing for me was adjusting to Lucarella. He, I get coaches. He's different. We know he's different. So having to adapt to what he wants was probably the biggest thing I was focused on because I mean, kids are asking you. It's you get so comfortable with a certain staff. Kids will ask you, "Hey, what we got tomorrow?" And if you know the coach, you can kind of give them an idea of like what we got tomorrow, or you won't tell them, but you still know what you're doing
Mm,
tomorrow. With Coach Lou, that was not the case. So kids are asking me what we're doing tomorrow. I wasn't going to tell them anyway, or sometimes I would, sometimes I wouldn't. But either way, in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, that's a great question. I'm wondering too. I don't know. And so because with Coach Lou, we may have a traditional lift, and there may be another day we're running the stadium, or there may be another day we're running from practice field to practice field, just different stuff, just stuff. Right when you think you figured them out, you realize you haven't figured them out because the next day he surprises you. So it's funny. Some of the workouts our kids did, if they found out at 8 o'clock, I didn't know not too much long. I probably knew a couple days before. You know what I mean? Or so because again, he's so stuck on like he can program, but he'll change stuff if he sees fit. So the difference between me and 22 and 23 obviously more vocal. You're average of the five people you hang with, so naturally he gives messages. I'm naturally going to give him two, right? He's just a more vocal guy, energetic guy. So I think that's what changed in me a little bit. Just making sure I reach everybody, especially with guys you typically wouldn't talk to. So with Coach Lou, we have certain lifts where you just like you program, he will program hard on putting certain people with each other, and he'll make sure we do certain lifts where it doesn't affect what we're trying to do. So, for instance, if he wants to put a lineman with a kicker, and the lineman's 6'5" and the kicker's 5'10", you can't squat because of the height difference. Well, we're going to trap bar deadlift today, so he'll even put exercises where there's not a discrepancy. It won't cause any issues as far as the flow because he's that built on. I need to get these certain kids together. You know what I mean?
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's real interesting. So I'm telling you, he changed my mind on a lot of stuff, and you actually see it play out. You see kids talk to kids who never would have talked to each other. These different guys get nicknames. Oh, we have the funniest nicknames now because you may have a D lineman from South Florida talking to little Timmy, a kicker, whoever from Arizona or something. So guys who just culturally are not the same, but it's amazing. So for me, I had to be able to adapt, and that's probably the biggest difference for me in 23 and the 22. In 22, I just got in where I fit in, and I did what I knew. Where 23, it's like you got to be all things to all people, and whatever your strong suit is as a coach, we got to do that, right? I didn't have to explain stuff too much to guys in 22. I didn't have to talk in front of guys too much in 22. I just worked with my little group of guys. With Lou, he may put you in a position where you almost are acting as the head strength coach today. You may have to run the warm up. You may have to run through the lift and really explain stuff to them, and which I'm sure people do other places. But Lou always keeps us growing. We watch podcasts. We did that in camp. We watch podcasts. We all pick one. We listened to it. I listened to Joey G and Kurt Hester, I think, and then another guy would listen to someone else, and then we get at the round table and we give summaries on what we learned, like it was a report. And so then I got to hear two guys, right, with Hester and Joey G, and then all of our other staff, they got to hear theirs, and then I got to get the cliff notes from all of them. And so we just share information, talk about different things. So that's where I could go on and on, but that's just what made it so different in 23 than 22. I was a certain type of coach in 22, and I think I was a pretty good coach, but Lou helped me just open my mind and my eyes to other stuff. So now I feel in that year of learning, I feel like I got 3, 4 years worth of experience in one year. So that's the difference between Coach Bell in 23 to 22. Now going into 24.
That's my perfect question coming up next. What about 24? What are the things you're trying to build on and work on? What transitions do you see coming?
Yeah, man, it's awesome. It's exciting because what I like to do is I look back on me in January of 23, and I'm like, I'm not even close to what I was back then. Like, it's amazing. And so now I'm like, I can't imagine myself going into 25 saying this version of me right now didn't know nothing, but it's gonna be that way. I'm gonna learn even more. So it's exciting. Coach Lou's been teaching us some things, and we've been working on trying to figure out how can we change certain things but keep the engine going. So I'm interested. I don't know, but I'm gonna learn. And I'm gonna get better. And I'm gonna grow. And naturally, that's just gonna happen from the kids. They're gonna force me into being a better coach. We got new groups of kids, especially with the portal. The turnover is a little more now. So I'm gonna have to adapt to some new things I haven't seen before, coach some different things I haven't coached before. So I don't know how I'm gonna grow, but I know I am. So I'm excited to see.
I mean, that's exactly what it's all about, right? Is getting better every single year,
Yeah.
And my focus is we talked about that starting strength certification. Like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes I've used this excuse for myself a little bit. Is like I like coaching technique, right? But if it's like good, I'll take it, right? I don't take perfect on a lot of time. And then I was talking with Seth Thompson at Winthrop, and he said your rep is your reputation. And I was like, damn, that kind of rings a little bit true for me. Like I'm more focused on technique this year, and that's gonna be kind of my focus. So it's funny you're talking about those transitions and a different coach because it's going to be a different coach come up in this offseason,
Yep.
for our guys. And then the transfer portal, like you said, too, what's so fun about basketball is there's so many different coaches. And so you might get a two-time transfer in now and somebody who's had a strength coach who, does micro dosing in basketball area. And I would never do that in my life. It's just not who I am as a coach. I can see it working, but it's different. And so that forces me to be a better coach too, is explaining my process and having to justify every single thing that I have within a program too. Is not, the kids are smarter. I feel like every single day too when they come in. So I sometimes I feel like I got my back against the wall a little bit just talking
Yeah.
about why we're doing certain things because they've had it done a different type of way. So I think growth is the theme. I think everybody's trying to grow this year, but again, I think it's always about just getting better and being a better coach every single year.
Yeah, man. It's the same thing. You want your players to grow, and in the midst of all that, you're growing too. And it's funny you talk about players. They know a little bit now. They don't have to see a CS, but they know. A player knows if he's getting better or not. So they'll challenge you for sure. Like if your kid doesn't feel like he's getting better, you'll see it on his face, and you talk to him, you figure things out. So that's also what keeps you growing. Because nowadays, with players, they got Instagram. They see cool little workouts or little exercises that they want. Hey, coach, I want to try this. Why can't we do this? You know what I mean? And it'll be some crazy ones. It'll be like, man, look, if you want to do all this, we can do this afterwards. But we got to get the general workout first, and we'll talk about it. We'll figure it out. So it's interesting, especially today. So much technology is at just right there in your phone. The kids got YouTube, they got Instagram, they see the highlight videos of the NFL players in the off season working out with their trainers. Man, I like that. Why can't we do that? So that keeps you on your toes too. So you really got to adjust with the times. So that the kids in general, they're going to keep you growing because if you're just stuck in your way and want to do just exactly what you want to do, man, they're seeing everybody else do stuff too. And you could tell them, hey, I don't want you to do it. We're not going to do that here. Some of these kids will go to another gym and do extra
Mm.
work, which is sometimes it's really just hurting them. And so you definitely got to know what you're talking about and really get the kid to really believe in it and explain it to them because they're not just the way it is today. Some kids aren't just going to be like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. They want to know the why and they want to see results. So It's oh man, it's this yeah, this game is challenging. I love it though.
It's so funny you bring that up because we have a walk on who just like loves lifting. Like it's his absolute favorite thing. He's has a family here, a family company that is just he's gonna transition into right after graduating, and they've got a weight room in there. I mean, set up with every single possible tool you can imagine. And so he'll text me on Sunday nights and be like, "Hey, what are we doing tomorrow? Because I'm gonna hit front squat or something like that." And he got so mad at me last week because I switched up our days on lifts, and he's like, "Well, I just hit back squat yesterday." I'm like, that's not my problem. But he's a walk on and I'll let him do him because, he's a good weight room guy and helps us out. But I agree that extra work and it'll happen on the side and it really can't affect your program. They don't have their CSCS, which is like dangerous too, because they know just enough to know, but then they don't
Mhm.
know enough to know a lot of the reasoning behind things or why things are organized within a certain way. So it makes a difference for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Corey, dude, thank you so much for coming on, man. If anybody wants to reach you, if anybody wants to follow you on social media, anything like that, what would be the best way to do it?
Yeah, I think Twitter, Instagram, I think they're the same. It's the letter M and then Corey Bell. So MCoreyBell. You'll find me, I think, on I still got Twitter. You'll find me on Twitter or Instagram. And yeah, that's where you can find me on there.
Awesome, man. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here and I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely.